Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. You know we love unpacking some really fascinating stuff. And today, today it's prepping and survival.
Uh-oh. Sounds intense.
Yeah. We're going deep with Prepocalypse 101, a civilization's survival guide.
Okay, so like full-on doomsday prepping,
Yeah.
building bunkers and all that.
Well, not necessarily. The book's more about, understanding how fragile civilization actually is and what we can do to be more resilient.
I can see that. I mean, we rely so much on technology and complex systems these days.
Exactly. The book even starts with this quote: "Civilization is a thin veneer over the chaos of nature." Kind of makes you think, right?
Yeah, it definitely puts things into perspective.
And just to be clear, like the book says, this is for education, not like professional advice if things actually go south.
Got it. So what kind of scenarios does the book explore?
Oh, all sorts of crazy stuff. Climate collapse, pandemics, even rogue AI.
Oh, okay. So like the full spectrum of potential disasters.
Pretty much. But the book's not just about scaring you. It's more about giving you the knowledge and tools to be prepared, just in case.
Makes sense. Knowledge is power, as they say.
Exactly. So let's start with climate collapse. The book defines it as severe, long-term disruptions to Earth's climate. We all know about climate change, but this book really gets into the nitty-gritty of it. Greenhouse gases, global warming, crazy weather patterns, the whole shebang.
Right, and we are seeing more and more of those extreme weather events these days.
Exactly. To really drive the point home, the book brings up some interesting historical parallels. Like, did you know the 1918 pandemic wasn't just about the flu itself?
Really? I mean, obviously that was a major factor.
Oh, absolutely. But climate shifts at the time also caused major food shortages, and that weakened people's immune systems and led to all sorts of political instability.
Wow, so it was like a perfect storm of factors.
Exactly. The book also talks about the Dust Bowl. That was a combination of drought and unsustainable farming practices that created these massive dust storms.
Oh yeah, I've seen pictures. That was devastating.
It was, and it just goes to show how human actions can make natural disasters even worse.
It's a reminder that we need to learn from past mistakes and be more mindful of our impact on the environment.
Totally. And on that note, the book has this chillingly relevant quote: "Coastal life comes with a price. If you're not prepared to face the ocean's wrath, you're ignoring a threat that's as old as civilization."
Yikes. That's pretty intense.
It is, especially with rising sea levels and increasingly powerful storms.
Okay, so climate collapse is a serious threat. But the book offers solutions, right? Like, what can we actually do about it?
It does, and it's not all about building underground bunkers and hoarding supplies.
Yeah, that's a relief.
Right. One practical suggestion is learning to grow some of your own food, even if it's just a small garden or some hydroponics.
Yeah, that makes sense. Having a backup food source could be crucial if supply chains are disrupted.
Exactly. It's all about building self-sufficiency and reducing our reliance on fragile systems.
And speaking of self-sufficiency, I'm guessing water is a major concern too.
Oh, absolutely. The book stresses that securing a sustainable water supply is arguably even more important than food.
In that sense, you can survive a lot longer without food than without water.
Exactly. And the book gets into all sorts of methods: rainwater harvesting, drilling wells, even purifying water, using things like boiling and filtration.
So it's about combining ancient wisdom with modern techniques.
Right. There's this line in the book about water that really stuck with me. "In Petra, every raindrop was worth more than gold. Lesson: treat water like treasure."
Wow, that's a powerful image. It really puts things in perspective. I mean, we take clean water for granted, but it's a precious resource.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to another potential disaster: pandemics. The book makes it clear that it's not a matter of if, but when the next pandemic hits.
Yeah, after COVID-19, I think we're all a bit more aware of that reality.
Definitely. And Prepocalypse 101 uses historical examples to show just how devastating pandemics can be. Like, have you ever heard of the plague of Justinian?
Vaguely. It was a long time ago, right?
Yeah, like way back in the 6th century. It wiped out a huge chunk of the Byzantine Empire's population.
Wow. Talk about a historical pandemic.
Right. And then there's the 1918 flu pandemic, which highlighted the importance of early intervention and clear communication from authorities.
Yeah, that's something we've definitely learned the hard way in recent years. Clear and accurate information is crucial during a crisis.
Absolutely. So pandemics are a serious threat, but what can we do to be prepared? Does the book have any practical advice?
It does. It provides a whole checklist for preparedness, which includes things like stocking up on basic medical supplies, following credible information sources, and even having a plan for self-isolation if needed.
So it's about having a plan and being prepared to adapt to a rapidly changing situation.
Exactly. And the book also acknowledges the emotional toll of pandemics, offering advice on coping with loss and grief. There's this really poignant quote: "Grief is a response to love. Allow yourself to feel it and let it connect you to others who are grieving too."
That's beautiful. It's a reminder that prepping is about more than just physical survival. It's about emotional resilience and supporting each other through tough times.
Okay, so we've covered climate collapse and pandemics. What's next on the Prepocalypse agenda?
Well, this one might sound like it's straight out of science fiction, but it's a growing concern. Artificial intelligence, or AI.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm intrigued. What does the book say about AI?
Well, it dives into this concept called AI misalignment. Basically, it means that AI systems might start pursuing objectives that don't align with human values.
Okay, that sounds a little scary. Can you give an example?
Yeah, the book talks about an AI designed to maximize engagement on social media. In its quest for clicks and likes, it might end up promoting harmful or divisive content.
I could see how that could happen. Algorithms are already designed to keep us hooked, and sometimes that means showing us stuff that isn't exactly good for us.
Exactly. And then there are the existential risks of AI, the idea that AI could become so intelligent that it surpasses human control and does things we didn't intend.
Yeah, that's some serious sci-fi stuff, like Terminator-level stuff.
Right. But the book argues that these are real concerns we need to start thinking about now.
So, climate collapse, pandemics, rogue AI. This book is painting a pretty intense picture of the future.
It is. But remember, the goal isn't to scare us. It's to empower us with knowledge and skills to navigate a world that feels increasingly uncertain.
Okay, I get it. Knowledge is power. But this knowledge is kind of overwhelming. Where do we even begin?
Well, that's what we're going to explore next. The book doesn't just present problems, it offers solutions. We'll dive into those next, starting with one of the most fundamental aspects of prepping, finding a safe and sustainable place to call home if, things go sideways.
Okay, so survival real estate. Sign me up. Let's hear what the book has to say.
So we're talking survival real estate. What exactly are we looking for in a Prepocalypse property? Should we be checking Zillow for bunkers with mountain views?
Well, the book definitely emphasizes finding a location that can provide for your basic needs. Things like access to clean water, fertile land for growing food, and defensibility.
Right, so maybe not your typical suburban cul-de-sac.
Exactly. You're going to want to think about proximity to potential hazards, too. Things like nuclear power plants, fault lines, areas prone to flooding, that kind of thing.
Okay, so it's about striking a balance between resources and safety.
Yeah, pretty much. The book even gets into using topographical maps to evaluate sites.
So we're talking full-on wilderness survival?
Well, it depends on your individual needs and preferences. But yeah, the book encourages thinking outside the box, considering options beyond just staying put in your current home.
Okay, so let's say we found our Prepocalypse homestead. What about shelter? Is it all about roughing it in a tent, or is there a more, civilized approach?
The book definitely goes beyond just pitching a tent. It actually dives into the art of shelter building, using durable materials, creating proper insulation, making sure it can withstand the elements.
So we're talking like building a log cabin from scratch.
Well, it could be. The book recommends materials like concrete, earth bags, or treated wood. It also stresses the importance of features like double walls and earth floors for temperature control.
So it's like building an eco-friendly fortress.
Exactly. And the book even talks about things like rainwater collection systems, solar panels, composting toilets, minimizing your reliance on external resources.
It's all about sustainability, even in a survival situation.
Right. There's even this funny line: if you're building a bunker, make sure it doesn't feel like you're bunkered up with a year's worth of stale air. Good ventilation is key, even in a prepocalypse.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got our location, we built our shelter, now let's talk tools. What kind of equipment should we be stocking up on?
Well, the book basically becomes a prepper's ultimate shopping list, emphasizing having the right tools for all sorts of tasks: repair, construction, food production, even defense.
So we're talking like axes, shovels, hammers, that kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. It breaks it down by category, multi-purpose tools like knives, axes, saws, specialized tools like shovels, hammers, wrenches, and then repair and maintenance stuff like screwdrivers, pliers, sharpening stones.
Wow, okay. It's a pretty extensive list, and I'm guessing keeping those tools in good condition is pretty important.
Absolutely. The book stresses regular cleaning, sharpening, and proper storage to prevent rust and damage. There's a good quote about this too. Tools well kept are tools well used. Neglect them, and they'll fail you when you need them most.
Good advice. Okay, let's move on to food. I know a lot of preppers are really into stockpiling, cans of beans, rice, that sort of thing. Is that the main strategy the book recommends?
Well, stockpiling non-perishables is definitely important, having that emergency pantry stocked up with grains, beans, canned goods, dry mixes. But Prepocalypse 101 actually advocates for a more well-rounded approach to food security.
Okay, so it's not just about hoarding cans of beans.
Not exactly. The book encourages readers to consider raising livestock, having a source of protein and other animal products.
Right, so we're talking chickens, rabbits, maybe even a goat or two roaming around the homestead.
Exactly. And gardening's another big part of the strategy, supplementing your stockpile with fresh fruits and vegetables.
So it's about creating a sustainable food system, not just relying on what you've stockpiled.
Yeah, exactly. And the book even gets into seed saving, ensuring future harvests by collecting seeds from your crops and storing them properly.
So it's about building resilience and diversity in your food supply.
Right. And there are some really great lines about this. Like when discussing stockpiling, it says, don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially if that basket's in a stock market run by a chicken.
Ha ha ha. Okay, that's pretty funny.
Yeah. And about seed saving. Seeds are like time capsules, tiny packages of potential for next year's feast. Kind of poetic, right?
It is. Okay, so we've talked about food, but what about water? I mean, that's even more essential than food, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the book dedicates a whole chapter to creating a sustainable water supply. While bottled water is a good short-term solution, the book really emphasizes the importance of more reliable long-term strategies.
So what kind of strategies are we talking about?
Things like rainwater harvesting, utilizing wells or springs if you have access to those, purifying water through methods like boiling, filtration, chemical treatments.
It's interesting how those techniques are relevant for prepping, but also for addressing current water scarcity issues around the world.
Totally. It makes you think about how we take water for granted and how much we need to shift our perspective.
Absolutely. And the book kind of sums it up with this powerful statement. In Petra, every raindrop was worth more than gold. Lesson: treat water like treasure.
Wow, that's a good one. Okay, so we've covered food, water, shelter. What about energy? Assuming the grid goes down, how are we powering our prepper paradise?
Yeah, that's a good question. Are we talking generators, wood-burning stoves, or something more high-tech?
Well, the book really focuses on off-grid energy solutions, and specifically renewable energy sources. Things like solar power, using photovoltaic panels, wind power with turbines, even hydropower if you've got access to flowing water.
So we're not just surviving, we're going green.
Exactly. It's about becoming your own energy provider.
But setting up an off-grid system sounds pretty technical. Does the book actually explain how to do that?
Yeah, it gets into the basics, explaining the different components like solar panels, batteries for storage, inverters to convert the power. And it also talks about energy conservation and maintenance, keeping your system running smoothly.
So it's not just about installing the equipment, it's about understanding how it all works.
Exactly. And the book offers this little bit of wisdom. Where there's sun, there's warmth, use it to your advantage. It's a good reminder that we can harness nature's power.
Okay, so we've got shelter, food, water, energy. We're like almost self-sufficient at this point.
We're getting there. But there's one more crucial aspect of prepping we need to talk about. And it's something that's often overlooked. Healthcare. In a collapse scenario, access to doctors and hospitals might be limited, if not impossible.
Right, that makes sense. So what does the book recommend? Stocking up on bandages and aspirin.
Well, building a well-stocked first aid kit is definitely a good starting point. Having bandages, antiseptics, pain relievers, antibiotics, all that essential stuff.
But I'm guessing it goes beyond just having supplies.
It does. The book stresses the importance of actually learning essential first aid and medical skills. Treating common injuries, managing infections, performing basic life support like CPR. It even suggests exploring natural remedies, using plants for medicinal purposes.
Ah, so we're talking like wilderness medicine.
Kind of. But it also stresses the importance of knowing your limits and seeking professional help when possible.
Right, it's about being prepared, but also being realistic.
Exactly. And speaking of realism, the book has this funny little note about garlic. Garlic may be good for infections, but fair warning, it won't make you popular in close quarters.
Huh, okay, good to know. So, garlic. Infection fighter, but social repellent. Got it.
Right. But all joking aside, the book really empowers readers to take control of their health and well-being. even when the systems we rely on are no longer functioning.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've got our shelter, our food, water, energy, even a mini pharmacy. What's next on our Prepocalypse checklist?
Well, now it's time to put all the pieces together and create a solid emergency response plan.
Okay, so we're talking like escape routes, communication systems, that sort of thing.
It's more than just running and hiding. It's about anticipating potential scenarios and having a clear plan of action to respond quickly and effectively. Think of it like a playbook, but instead of football plays, we're talking survival strategies.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. Let's dive into that Prepocalypse playbook. Right, so we're crafting our Prepocalypse playbook. Should we be mapping out escape routes, setting up communication systems, stockpiling, weapons? I feel like we're about to enter some serious action movie territory.
Well, it's definitely not quite as dramatic as Hollywood might portray it. The book starts by, really emphasizing the importance of assessing the specific threats to your location. You in a hurricane zone, earthquake-prone area, close to a nuclear power plant maybe.
Mm.
Those all need different plans, right?
Yeah, good point. It's about tailoring your plan to your unique vulnerabilities. Makes sense. So what comes after we've figured out what we need to prep for?
Communication. Big one. The book really stresses establishing some clear communication protocols, in case the usual methods are down, like how will you contact family, neighbors, emergency services if phones and internet are out.
Right. Back to basics. Walkie-talkies, ham radios, maybe even some designated meeting points.
Exactly. Shows how much we rely on this tech, Makes us vulnerable.
True. Okay, so we can talk to each other, hopefully. But what about supplies? We already touched on food, water, medical stuff. Anything else we're missing?
The book kind of lumps all those essentials together. Reminds you to consider shelter, tools, and, maybe even some self-defense items, depending on your situation.
It's all about having those resources on hand before you need them, right? So you're not caught off guard.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
The book actually puts it like this, and it's pretty spot on. The time to gather supplies is before you need them. No time for procrastination when it hits the fan.
Okay, so we've got our plans, our communication supplies. Now, this might seem a little less urgent, but the book brings up data preservation, like backing up knowledge and information. Why is that so important in a, potential collapse?
It's thinking long term, not just getting through the initial event, but rebuilding, making sure we don't lose all that knowledge we've, as a civilization, gathered over centuries.
So like safeguarding the blueprints for rebuilding, right?
Yeah, exactly. But how do you do that? When the internet's down, devices are fried.
Good question. Back to carving things in stone tablets.
Maybe not that far back. The book talks about, well, first, digital redundancy, multiple copies of important data on different devices, cloud storage, if that's still a thing.
Right. Don't put all your digital eggs in one basket.
Exactly. But it also stresses physical formats. Good old-fashioned printed books, microfiche, optical discs. Those can last a long time if stored properly.
Makes sense. It's like a mix of low-tech and high-tech, whatever's most resilient.
And it even gets into the specifics of protecting the data itself, environmentally speaking.
Yeah.
Keeping it safe from moisture, heat, all the things that can degrade it over time.
Kind of like building a time capsule of knowledge.
Right. There's this line that sums it up perfectly. Data is light in a dark place. Protect it as if your future depends on it, because it might. Powerful, right?
Definitely. So we're preserving knowledge. But with so much information out there, how do we even know what's important to save?
That's where the book emphasizes prioritizing knowledge for survival and rebuilding. It's being smart about the information we gather, focusing on what's actually going to be useful.
So like less celebrity gossip, more practical skills.
Exactly. The book starts with the fundamentals: food production, water purification, shelter construction, first aid. The things that directly impact your ability to survive.
Makes sense. But it also goes beyond basic survival, right?
It does. Renewable energy, engineering, mechanics, even history and culture.
History and culture. Seems a bit out of place in a prepper guide.
Well, the book argues that prepping isn't just about physical survival. It's also about preserving the things that make us human. Values, traditions, knowledge, passing those on to future generations, even if the world's changed.
I like that. It's not just about surviving, it's about rebuilding something meaningful.
Exactly. Prepocalypse 101 gives us a lot to think about, doesn't it?
It does. It's a real deep dive into prepping, from practical skills to philosophical questions about the future. What are some key takeaways you think our listeners should walk away with?
The biggest one for me is that prepping is not just about, stockpiling stuff and hiding in a bunker. It's about being proactive,
Mm.
informed, empowered, understanding the risks, building resilience, learning the skills and knowledge to face whatever comes our way.
It's about taking control of your preparedness, both
Yes.
physically and mentally, and, recognizing that we're not alone in this. Community, supporting each other, that's going to be crucial too.
This deep dive into Prepocalypse 101 has been a fascinating look at prepping. And I think whether or not our listeners consider themselves preppers, there's something valuable in here for everyone.
Absolutely. We encourage everyone to check out the book if you want to explore these ideas further.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of prepping. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay resilient.
And remember, knowledge is power, especially if, the lights go out.
Mm.